Hello, guys. Welcome back to another exciting episode on the show. Control or be controlled. The podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And I remain your host, Darlington. Today's guest is Nita Sweeney. Nita, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, it's one of those names that you cannot say without smiling. A very very beautiful name, Nita Sweeney. So she's a serial memoirist and who writes about thriving while managing often serious mental illness. She's the award-winning wellness author of the running and mental health memoir, Depression Hates a Moving Target. Yeah, depression actually hates a moving target. So, how running with my dog brought me back from the brink, and co-creator of the writing journal. You should be writing a journal of inspiration and instruction to keep your pen moving. So, Nita, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right. So, you have written a lot of books, sir. So, for the course of this interview, which of them would you like to put at the forefront?
Well, the most recent book is probably the one that I would really like to talk about. It's called Memorial, the Year My Dad and I Stopped Keeping Score. And it's kind of a prequel to all the other books because the events that are covered in that book happened before anything else that I've written about. And it's a very serious mental health memoir about a serious time in my life when I was very mentally ill. So that's probably the place I'd like to start. We can wander all over if you like, but.
Okay, so tell us, how did that particular book come about? You said it's like, yeah, go on.
Say that again? I didn't understand your question.
Go on. I said, how did the book come about? The inspiration behind the book.
Right. So it was the first really serious book length thing I tried to write. And it took me many, many years of doing other books to kind of figure out how to put the pieces together. But in 1994, I had been a partner in a law firm and I was, doing okay, busy, had interactions with my family, but I was not being treated for some mental illness that I really had. And I was trying to decide kind of what to do with my life. And I wound up having a pretty major depressive episode. I had suicidal ideation and I wound up hospitalized for that because I was contemplating ending my life. And I was recovering from that in early 1995 when my father was diagnosed with lung cancer, metastatic lung cancer. So he, in all likelihood, he was not going to survive that. And I had been, kind of this busy person and then somewhat suddenly had a lot of time on my hands. And all he wanted to do was play golf. And so that summer, we played golf, which I did very badly, and he did very well for a while. And we got to know each other again. And in the process of that, of learning kind of more about him, I learned more about myself and could see some of the destructive patterns in his emotional health that in some ways led me to the mental challenges that I had. And I'm not blaming him. He was, it wasn't my parents, it's more genetics and also modeling, watching him do what he did to himself, the way his inner critic really, really was horrible. And that's what the keeping score is about. It's keeping score on the golf course. And eventually we stopped keeping score and also keeping score with each other and within ourselves, me keeping score of how well I was doing at the law firm, how well I was doing in life, and him, his just horrible inner critic, always being present. So that's the most recent book. And that was the most difficult book I have written to date. It took me 22 years to finally get it out into the world and kind of figure out how to tell the story, because it's a very braided story. It jumps around in time a lot. And, the main time period is 1995, but it goes back and forth in time a lot. And that was a real challenge for me to do. And I had a lot of help, and, editors helped me figure out how to do that.
Okay. Thank you so much. So, what was the writing process like because this particular book it seems personal to you, right?
Yes, all my books really are. I write memoirs, so they really are. But this one is particularly emotionally raw, because I talk about addiction. I talk about, my sexuality. I talk about relationships. It's pretty much all on the table there.
So, what's the most how would I say it now? The most uncomfortable conversation that you had in your book?
Um, well, actually, the most difficult conversation I had that occurred in the book was around some end of life choices, where my family and the doctors that were treating my father were suggesting things that I was relatively certain my father didn't want, and no one was talking to him. And so I had to make a choice as to whether to sort of stand up for him. And I don't mean to sound like a hero, because it wasn't like that. It was really pretty awful. But I had to kind of find an inner strength within myself to choose, do we advocate to prolong his life, or do we do it what he wants? And that was really tough. And it was also probably the place where he and I were the closest. And it was just a moment or two where he and I were really, really on the same team. And that was it. It was a medical end of life, the end of life decisions. That was just a really, really difficult place.
So, in your writing process, were you emotional about everything? Were there times where you probably shed a tear over a particular story you're writing about?
Yeah, I would have to go to bed. I'd write a little bit and then I'd have to go to bed. It was bad sometimes, but it was also great because it felt, this is not a spoiler. He did die in this, during that time period. He did eventually die. So in writing the book, in some ways, it felt as if I brought him back to life, or not that I brought him back to life, but that he was with me, because we were there sharing these experiences again. I was reliving some wonderful times. I mean, the times on the golf courses, some other times when, even when he and my mom were living with my husband, Ed, and I, there were some really funny times and some very poignant moments. And so I was reliving all that, and that was really wonderful. But yeah, sometimes it would just be very painful, because there were just parts that were difficult. I mean, this was my father, and even though we'd had somewhat of a strained relationship, we had repaired a lot in that process. And so I really respected him and miss him a lot. I still miss him a lot. And so, yeah, it was kind of tough. But at some point in the writing process, I was able to step back enough. It was really in the editing process and toward the end of the editing process where I was really, really trying to pull the pieces together. I was able to step back enough almost to look at myself, my father, and all the members of my family, anyone who was involved, almost as if they were characters. Now, I was careful to stick with the truth. It's memoir, so I want to try to keep it. It has to be, you don't lie, you don't make stuff up. And so I was able to step back enough to look at what the story needed, the story that happened, and how best to tell that. And sometimes that meant cutting scenes that I loved, or condensing things where I really wanted to give every single detail, and realizing that doesn't serve the reader, because ultimately the reader is the most important person in the whole process. Will they understand what I'm trying to say? Will they follow the story? Will they be, they're either being informed, they're being entertained, they're being offered insights that might help change them. They're being offered understanding, compassion, empathy, things like that. And I had to put myself and my desires aside to serve the story as it happened. And that was probably hard. That was probably the hardest, because part of why I write is, I don't know if you'd call it therapeutic, but it's because it feels good, or it feels like I'm doing something important. It's like self-care for me. But when you're publishing books, that's still true. And yet you have to step aside and make the reader more important than you. And, I just, that's something that I sometimes struggled with. And luckily I had some amazing editors, a couple of people along the way who really helped me see the places where I was stuck in the way I wanted to tell the story, or what made sense to me versus what would make sense to the reader. And that was so helpful. The book would not have come together in the way it did without the help of a couple of professional, I hired them, professional editors. I always like to say writing is a team sport. People always think, you're alone in your office, which you kind of are a lot of the time. But I was able to bring people on board to review the work, to elevate it to a level that I couldn't on my own. And I think that's actually pretty normal from what I know of the publishing industry. Writing in general is, we usually have people not looking over our shoulders, but there to kind of catch things that we wouldn't catch and see it from a different perspective. And so I'm really, really grateful for that. But yeah, lots of tears, lots and lots of tears, and lots of, okay, I got to step away from this now. This is too much. I got to go for a walk. I got to go take a nap. I got to go have lunch. I got to, lots and lots and lots of that.
Okay, thank you so much. So, do you think being emotionally helps you to write the story better?
Well, I think I have a skill set that lets me feel emotions and perceive emotions in ways that not everybody else does. And that serves me in being able to put the emotion on the page. Where it doesn't help is when I'm trying to figure out the logical thing, this, then that, like when to tell what, because I get so wrapped up in the emotions. And that's where the editors really, really help, is where they can say, now, wait a minute, you're just dumping all this way too early. This is still true, but why don't you wait to tell part of that till later, so that it keeps the reader moving through the book. And I think it'll be interesting to see, because I do have more books planned. It'll be interesting to see if I'm better at that now, because I saw someone do it with my work and saw how it could be done. But I don't think that the logical part of that is going to ever be my strength. It's always the emotions are going to be my strength. So I don't know. I think we're just also different. And I do some coaching, and part of what I do when I coach writers, especially, or really anybody, but I try to find out what their strengths are and what their kind of personality drivers are, because we're also different, that we have strengths that are helpful to us in some ways, and in other ways there are blind spots. And there's only so much you can do with that. So you need to find someone with the editing process. This is kind of what we do. We write, and then we have someone look at it. In that process, especially knowing that I need someone who's more logical, whereas someone else who's much more kind of a structure-oriented person might need someone who's more emotional to help them put more emotions on the page. And because they have all the logic down, but it feel cold. And so for me, it was finding someone to help me really with the structure, pushed me to dive deeper emotionally also, because I see the emotions so easily that I think there's things on the page that aren't there. I mean, I think I've made the emotional trajectory clear when it's not, because it's so obvious to me. And so having someone who's more logical to help me with the structure and to say, I don't get that. What are you trying to say here? Was really, really helpful. So that's kind of a yes and no answer, that some ways being a much more emotional person was very, very helpful. And then there were also the times where somebody else might have been able to push through difficult emotions and keep working when I needed to step away from the page because it was just too much, because I would just get flooded with the emotions. So yeah, sometimes it was really, really helpful, and other times it was a detriment. And I think that's true with anybody, that they always have something that they're not good at. And that's why we have the team. That's why we have other people that help us, so that we don't have to do any of this alone.
All right, Nita. So what do you hope readers feel? Do you hope they feel the same feeling that you felt while writing a book, while writing your memoir?
Oh, say that again. I'm sorry, Darlington. I didn't understand you.
Do you hope that or you wanted, while you were writing, did you want the readers to have the same emotional feeling that you had while writing?
Yes, to a certain extent. I wanted to carry them along the journey. One of the things that I did that was most helpful was I imagined being in the golf cart with my father, with the reader kind of in the back of the golf cart, and them riding along with us, and I'm showing them the story. Or I imagine them on the sofa with me, and I'm saying, I'm going to tell you a story, so that they're going to have their own experience, because everybody brings their own personality, history, programming, nature, nurture, all of that to any story. So they have their own stuff. And what I try to do is show them what I experienced, and then you kind of let them have their experience also. It's a little bit of a tricky balance, because you don't want to lead the reader by the nose. You don't want to, drag them along to a certain extent, because they need to have their own experience. And yet you have to be clear where you are in time, what happened, what your experience was, like what my emotional journey was through all of this. So there's the physical journey of what actually kind of just the facts sort of thing. And then there's the emotional journey that I had. And then there's space for the reader to have their own emotional journey, or, intellectual journey, understanding of what they're reading. So I was very aware of, I'm always very aware of my own emotional journey, but I also tried to be, and that's where the editors helped, tried to be aware that the reader needed to have space to interpret for themselves what was really going on. That I wasn't the last, I'm the last word on what happened to me, but I'm not the last word on what they think about it. Once you hit publish, once you, like, your publisher sends it out into the world and they hit publish and you're, on all the retail sites where you buy books, it's out of your hands then. You can come on podcasts and explain, well, this is what I meant to do, but the book is there. It's like, it's in the book, whatever's there. So it's like, I did my best. That's all you can do.
Okay, all right. So what is the main purpose for you for writing? Like your particular memoir, the latest one. What do you hope readers take away from it?
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not understanding the question. It sounds a little garbled. Can you say that again?
Your latest memoir, Nita.
Right,
what do you hope readers will take away from it?
Oh, okay, the message, yeah, and that's something you have to be really careful not to beat people over the head with. But the biggest thing is that it's not too late until somebody is gone, and even then, it might not be too late. It's almost like it's never too late to repair relationships, because even, we spent his last year together. We spent a ton of time together, and repaired a lot of wounds that seemed very, very deep to me, and were very important to me. And then even after he was gone, there was still some healing. And really, really, all these years later, there's still been some healing. And but it's just never too late to repair what seemed broken forever. I think that maybe one of the taglines we used in the marketing materials was, we weren't estranged, but we weren't warm and fuzzy. And that's partly because that's not who he was. He was he was an engineer, essentially. That was the way his brain was wired. Whereas I was very emotional, more like I'm not a therapist, but that kind of, more psychology, sociology kind of thing. And he and I always felt just sort of missed each other. We were just sort of never quite on the same page until that last year when we were literally in a golf cart together, driving across these goat pasture, cheap golf courses in rural Ohio, central Ohio, United States. And that time, that bonding gave me something I'm not sure I could have gotten. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that other members of my family got either, because they didn't have the opportunity. They didn't have, I was in a crisis situation. And so as I was trying to heal, I had this time with him. So yeah, it's just that it's never too late, and that it's important that, I wanted no regrets. I really, with him, wanted no regrets. And that's, of all the members of my family who I've lost, which we've lost a significant number over the years, and friends too, he's the one that I feel the most complete with, that we really, said it what needed to be said, and spent the time to be present for each other, which that's such a gift. You just don't get that. You just don't get that. So I'm forever grateful for that. And I guess that's the message, is gratitude, that if you have a chance to spend time with a loved one, whether they're dying or not, just in general, we tend to do this, way too late, to take the time, the moments to connect and stay connected, because once they're gone, they're really gone. And but never too late. That's probably the main message, is just that it's really not too late, even when you think it is.
All right, Nita. So, is there something you would like to share with my audience that I may not have asked you?
Let's see. It's funny, because I've spent so many years promoting a book called Depression Hates a Moving Target, which is about running with my dog, and how that greatly improved my mental health. And this book, because it happened so much before that, I wasn't running yet. I was hardly exercising at all yet then. I sometimes think that same message is even in this book, because what we did was we took to the golf course. We didn't sit at. There's a few scenes where we're in restaurants eating, but my dad somehow knew that he had to keep moving, even up until he couldn't, until really, really close to the end, that would just help him cope. And for him, that was golf. Part of it was a distraction, but we were outside and moving our bodies and spending time together. And community is a big thing in that first book, Depression Hates a Moving Target, the community I found within the runners. But with him, it was family, spending time with family, and, mending the things that needed to be mended. So yeah, I would still say Depression Hates a Moving Target, even though we're not talking about running, because that's just so true that sometimes, there is time to stop and sit and be. I'm a meditator too. And so there's definitely time to do that. But being present with whatever you're doing and moving your body so that you get your heart rate up a little bit. That would be the thing I would really leave people with, is that even in the hardest times, we hopped in the golf cart and off we went. And that was part of what it saved me emotionally, and I think it helped him cope with the fact that he was going to die. He was able to make choices that, difficult choices, and he was able to do things he wanted to do, speak clearly about what he wanted. And I think some way that the fact that he was in motion helped with that kind of greased the wheels so that other things could happen.
All right, Nita, thank you so much. This has been a very exciting episode. And what you said that depression hates the moving target, I honestly, I'm a believer of that as well. When I had anxiety, a lot of anxiety, I would wake up with anxiety. I started moving more in the morning. I would wake up, I would start running. I realized that the anxiety just started leaving my body. Depression was no longer there, just by movement. Movement is so important. Honestly, I know the importance of always moving. Thank you so much, Nita, for coming to my show. So, those who like to connect with you and they want to get your memoir and know more about what you do, also follow up maybe on upcoming memoirs as well, how can they do that?
Well, the best place to find me is on my website, which is nitasweeney.com. It's just my name, nitasweeney.com. All the books are there, and my coaching services are there. And sometimes I teach classes, and so the schedule for that. I've got some upcoming events if anybody is in Central Ohio or Northern Ohio. I guess I were doing one in Southern Ohio too, but if anybody's in the area or wants to come here, hey, that'd be great. So nitasweeney.com. I'm on a lot of the social media, but I really, I have a newsletter, and that's probably the best way to actually communicate with me is to get on my newsletter list. And I give little tips, and I let people know when anything new is coming out, and I ask questions and try to have a little bit of a conversation. So yeah, go to my website, please. Thank you very much. Thanks for the question.
All right, Nita, thank you so much. And I hope I've been able to use my platform to also give you a platform to be able to share your story and your memoir with me and my audience. So thank you so much for coming, and thanks to all my audience as well. You guys are the reason why we are able to do this. I said I hope I was able to give you a platform to talk with my audience and share your story and
Yes.
your memoir.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Appreciate
Thank
that a
you,
lot.
and thank you to my audience as well. You guys make sure to check out Nita's work, check out her work, and if this episode is speaking to you, try and share this episode to someone out there. It will be of great help to someone out there as well. Remember that depression hits a moving target. Thank you so much, and do have a wonderful day ahead.